As a female executive, being a mom, juggling a 9 to 5, and finding some semblance of personal time can prove to be quite the challenge if you're not skilled in the ability of managing your time and prioritizing the priorities that are most dear to you. There's only so many hours in a day, and the demands on women in the workforce continue to cause them to experience high levels of burnout. According to a study co-authored by Forbes and KPMG, it finds that 75% of women executives across all industries have experienced imposter syndrome and high levels of burnout, feeling inadequately and with a tinge of self-doubt, which makes them continuously doubt themselves and if they're qualified to perform the job in which they're in. The level of high achievement can be defined differently for every female executive, depending on the field of interest in which they're employed, the level of time they've spent practicing their craft and into the field, and how they define being consistently productive. If you believe you are an overachieving woman who has high expectations of your level of ambition, you've stumbled upon the right podcast to give you some clarity of performance and of peace of mind. Because you see, I had the privilege of engaging in conversation with executive leadership coach Lisa Pachence, whose focus is serving underfulfilled overachievers, female executives, and rising leaders to secure unprecedented career success without sacrificing their happiness. Pachence says that diversity of thought is a strength and competitive advantage that we can all take advantage of, and let it be a guiding light towards the promise of prosperity, both inside and outside of the office. And she joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super delighted to talk to you all about leadership and everything in between. Great to see you, my friend, and happy Wednesday to you.
Yes, you as well. Happy Wednesday.
Absolutely. So, Lisa, I know that you're an executive leadership coach and you help people find joy in their work while also helping them to avoid burnout. So I'm wondering if you can tell me what makes you so fabulous and why you love what you do.
Yeah. So I like to say that I am a recovering overachiever. So that means that this is a lifelong journey of putting down perfectionism, overachieving, performing, and having a life that I wildly love. And I tend to work with women just like me who are ambitious, who are driven, but also want to have a life that they don't need a vacation from, that they are wildly in love with. And you know, those those Sunday scaries that creep up on you, or that vacation that you're like, oh, it can't come soon enough. I'm so tired. I'm burned out. Um, I I work with those who are underfulfilled overachievers to have a life that you don't need to wait for that vacation in order to be sourced, in order to be refilled, in order to be rejuvenated. And I work with these women because I am that woman. I am that person who leads a big life. I want to leave a big legacy. And I've tended to go through these cycles of burnout throughout my life. By working with a coach and in coaching conversations, I've been able to transform that thought. And it's still a work in progress. I'm very much still a work in progress, but I was able to transform that cycle in one coaching conversation than years of therapy was able to do for me when I had that first coaching conversation. So it's coaching and working with underfulfilled overachievers, especially women in positions of leadership, is something I'm extremely passionate about. And I feel like I'm on a mission on this planet to build communities of support to prevent women from falling into that ongoing cycle of burnout and to have lives that they wildly love.
Well, I tell you, building social capital is increasingly important, isn't it?
Yeah, I love that phrase, social capital. What does it mean to you, Kevin?
Well, I'll give you a quick story
Yes.
before I answer that question. So, Lisa, one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast was I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. And Lisa, I actually found out at the age of 9 that I wouldn't be able to walk without the assistance of a walker for the duration of my life because of my cerebral palsy. So building social capital is one of the major reasons I wanted to start this podcast because as a result of my disability, sometimes it's harder for me to get out and network. So I use this platform to network with people, to meet great people like yourself, and build my own social capital because it's all about building relationships and making a meaningful difference for me. And one of the easiest ways you can do that is by building social capital, right? So that's my answer. I hope it answers the question.
Yes. Well, first of all, Kevin, thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for being on this podcast platform. Thanks for being vulnerable and putting your story out there. Um, it's wow, what a warrior you are for living your life and doing it intentionally. And I feel like the more people can own their stories and put it on loudspeaker, the more others are able to do the same and the more healing can be done. So thanks for that. And to me, social capital is the ability to generate trust in a consistent way. And not just trust, but consistency, reliability, um, professionalism, and a quality of care that you wouldn't have otherwise if you weren't out there building social capital.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Liz, I wanted to dive into the subject of sort of creating balance and how it's related to prosperity at the same time. So tell me, how do you think we can balance uh, the need to work and the need to capture prosperity while also living a balanced life?
Yeah. It is the age old question. How do we have a life of leisure and fun and joy while also having nice things and being able to have a sustainable lifestyle? And I think the main the first thing to do is realize that it is a context. It is a mindset that our culture has bestowed on us that puts those two things at odds, that we can't have both at the same time. Even the idea of balance means that one has to compensate for the other, or that you always have to manage this tightly controlled balance of work and life, or fun and work, or work and play. Even the phrase work-life balance puts those two things at odds. So if we were to flip this on its head and go, okay, where is there integration between work and life? Where can you integrate joy and effort? Where can you integrate fun and professionalism? Where is that integration? Then you might start having a different conversation. And rather than balance, you might be looking at, okay, well, how can I create more purpose in my work? How can I create more? How can I create more joy there? Or maybe how can I create more creativity in my personal life or in with my family, with my relationships? Where is that overlap between the two? Because we are a whole human being. We can't just separate or slice off parts of us. We bring that part with us. It just might not shine in work or in our non-work life. And the more that we're able to bring our purpose, our passion, our play, our joy, or fun into our professional life, the more satisfaction we will get. Now, that's not to say don't forget your boundaries. It is very, very important to have boundaries no matter where you are. You have to have boundaries on vacation. You have to have boundaries on weekends. You have to have boundaries on good things. It's why you can't, eat junk food 24/7. You have to have boundaries for yourself because your body needs variety.
Yeah,
So that's one of
absolutely.
the ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Lisa, I'm a huge believer in the power of sort of setting your own standard of expectations because it's my belief, Lisa, that in order to rise up to achieve prosperity, you first have to set your own foundational level of expectations because if you don't have a personal baseline, you can't rise to the level of anybody else's expectations. So,
Yes.
how do you think we can manage expectations and exceed them as leaders with also keeping what I just said in mind?
For sure. It's a really great question. I think the first thing is to know what those expectations are. So many times we go into a job and we're vague about what those responsibilities even look like, or there's expectations that are thrust upon us that are unconscious or aren't outlined. In coaching, one of the first things that I do with my clients is I always generate an agreement, both within the coaching program, all 6 to 12 months of the work that we do together, as well as in each individual session. Okay, what are we working on? What does that look like? What does success mean? Paint success for me. How will we know when we've gotten there? And it's the same thing in leadership too. You need to be able to first ask, okay, what are your expectations for me? What are my expectations for me? What are my expectations for my team? You need to be able to take a look at, okay, what are those expectations first in order to go, okay, where might I be, where might I be meeting those expectations? Where might I be exceeding? And where might I be falling short of those expectations? And then what do I want to do about it? I do think that we're still in a day and age where empathetic leadership, caring leadership is the most important things for our workforce. There is a mass amount of attrition that's happening, and not just layoffs, not just cutting costs, but also of really good talent. Quality people are leaving their companies because they're not being treated with care, consideration, and the flexibility that they need. And in fact, women and moms in particular are leaving the workforce. And so, how do we keep that talent around, being able to do things like empathize, get creative, be flexible, support? Have open forums and open communication. That is a great way to exceed expectations because people won't remember what you tell them or what you do, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And that's what has people stick around.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, as you know from doing your research on me, in addition to hosting this podcast, Lisa, I also work with organizations to help them amplify a more inclusive culture for folks with disabilities. So how do you think we can make the workplace more inclusive? And what's your view on the concept of allyship and really creating that partnership within marginalized groups that we may not necessarily be exposed to? What are your thoughts there?
So there is a brilliant woman by the name of Julie Ann Cromit who did a TED talk on this concept of um, inclusivity and storytelling, specifically inclusivity, storytelling, and um, the media. Sorry, my mom brain was blanking on that word, the media. And she has a quote in there that says, if we don't include everybody in this new narrative, then we run the risk of creating a world that doesn't work for anyone. So when building something out, when starting a new initiative, when generating new partners, a new team, being able to look in the places where you, you where you are not the same is so important. So, for instance, one of the things that I did when I was building out my team was take a look at, okay, what am I not good at? What is my where are my stops? Where might I have biases? What's my background? I wanted to bring on a assistant and a graphic designer specifically who does not look like me, who is a different gender, who is a different, has a different background, different race, different lifestyle, so that they can see what I can't see, because I'm naturally a biased human being. I've grown up how I've grown up. I am the way that I am. I look the way that I look. I've made choices the way that I've made choices. How can I expand my team out so that they can see the blind spots that I can't? And vice versa. So by any stretch of the means, I'm not an expert on this. In fact, I look to those who are experts to continue to learn and teach and indoctrinate and upgrade my own understanding. But that the thing that I know so far is to continue to look at, okay, where might my limitations be, and how can I expand to include more. And then the last piece is looking at places where I can lift up those who are not born into privilege, who, maybe there's a referral or a recommendation to someone with a disability, or someone from a diverse background, or a Black woman who just started her business. How can I lift her up? How can I refer her? How can I recommend her? And looking for places where I can use my platform to raise other voices.
Yeah, and Alicia, I know that you're an ambitious person as well, and you achieve sort of your coaching sort of vocations in less than half the time. It usually takes others to do the same, my friend. So tell me, where does your level of ambition come from?
Well, some is innate and organic. I am born into a family of very high achievers who, from the beginning, always set high expectations, but they never forced me to do anything. It was always, hey, you are capable of it if you choose to. So my family has always supported me to be the best, even if I wanted to be the best at the most outrageous, silliest things. And I was an athlete. I was a competitor from a very young age. I've always had a competitive streak. I think that's in my genetics and in my DNA, comes from my family. But I also was indoctrinated into sports at a young age, and I played high level soccer starting at the age of 11, where I traveled all over the U.S. I traveled internationally. I remember my very first international game. We actually played the Canadian national team at a tournament in at Disney World. And I've always had this sense of wanting to be the best version that I could be. And unfortunately, that wanting to be the best bordered, well, it was a streak of perfectionism. And perfectionism isn't necessarily bad, but it's usually built on a disempowered mechanism of being afraid of not being enough and not looking good and fearing looking bad. It's a protection mechanism. So it drove me from a very young age, but it also limited me, especially when it came to my professional life.
Yeah, and in the few minutes I have left, what was the other stuff? I'm curious if we can dive into the idea of personal development because, I'm a huge believer in that we have to take ownership of our own lives and sort of create our own narrative
Yes.
to our own story. So tell me about taking ownership of your life. And I'm fascinated to note your perspective on the art of personal development because every person is different. So what fascinates you the most about people?
Whoa, that's a big question. What fascinates me most about people is how there is a never ending ability for us to learn about ourselves and each other. There is an infinite amount of possibilities out there. And even if it's not possible now, let's say living on the moon or living on Mars is not possible now, it is absolutely possible in the future. It is possible. I also believe that there is an infinite amount of possibilities within us. There's an infinite amount of emotional landscape and mental understanding and awareness if we are willing to get curious enough to do the work within. I'm also a firm believer that so much of the problems of life, the violence, the war, the hate, the bias, the prejudice, is it can be boiled down to two things. The first is unhealed or unaddressed childhood wounds. It's the emotional things that we carry with us throughout our lives that we don't question. And then the second thing is an inability to take responsibility over our own stuff. And those two elements, the self awareness and responsibility, are things that coaching provides in spades with a byproduct of healing that comes along with understanding ourselves. And I got into coaching, I got into personal development because I frankly didn't understand people really well. I was put into a position of leadership that I frankly didn't deserve. I didn't know how to lead people. I was bad at it. And so I needed the support to understand myself emotionally, to understand others, and the skill sets of self awareness and responsibility. It's what I loved about coaching, and led me to it that was different than therapy. So, yeah, what fascinates me most about people is why we do what we do. And there's an infinite amount of answers to why we do what we do if we're willing to get curious, if we're willing to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, my final question for you this afternoon has to do with your own personal and professional legacy and how you want your legacy to be defined.
That's such a great question, Kevin. I'm so glad you asked that. I hope you asked that to everyone.
It's the way I end all of my podcasts. Don't worry.
Perfect. Snaps to you, my friend. Well, I want my personal and professional legacy to be defined with warmth, with trust, with love, with impact, and with a sense of unity. That I was able to bring people together, that I was able to add a sense of uh, difference, that I was able to generate a different conversation in the room, that I had people thinking that I listened differently, and also warmth to provide a non-judgmental safe space for others to be themselves, learn about themselves, listen to themselves, and therefore listen, be, and accept others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Lisa, Tell me if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, you can email me at lisa.pachence@accomplishmentcoaching.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Lisa Pachence, and you can visit my website, coachingwithlp.com. That is coaching with L as in Lisa, P as in Peter.com.
Fantastic. Well, Lisa, I really respect the work that you do in the field of personal and leadership development, my friend. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated, and I want to wish you well in your continued efforts to make our world just a better place. And I want to thank you for being here this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Yes, this was a lovely conversation that you generated, Kevin. Thank you so very much. Appreciate the work you do.